I'm Rob Downey, a family practice MD and Institute for Functional Medicine certified practitioner. I'm coming to you from Seaworthy Functional Medicine in Homer, Alaska. Seaworthy exists to help people overcome their health challenges and be fully vital. Today we are fortunate enough to have with us Deb Matthew MD, a hormone specialist. Welcome, Dr. Matthew.
Hey, it's so great to be here.
Delighted to have you. Been looking forward to it. I'll summarize your bio for folks, but please make sure and add to it as we segue into the interview so that we have the full dimensions of who you are and what you care about. I saw that you're the happy hormone doctor, which makes a lot of sense to me given that I've taken care of a lot of women over the course of my family practice and functional medicine career. And to me, that word summarizes what they want their relationship to their hormones to be, which is happy, as opposed to the converse. So you're a best-selling author and international speaker, a frequent guest, including for me today, for which again I'm grateful, and I'm also grateful to our listeners for taking the time to listen and learn and think. You're a guest on the major networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox. Your personal journey includes struggling with some years of fatigue and irritability, and then how you solved that personal journey created part of your professional passion. And in particular, women 40 to 60, but also those interested in functional medicine can learn from what you care about in terms of how to use non-pharmacologic, non-drug solutions to use vitality as a clinical tool. Feel great, love how they're doing. Anything I should add?
Yeah, I think that sums it up pretty good, because I am one of those people that I just wanted to be happy and feel good, but I was exhausted all the time. Like napping was my favorite pastime, my favorite hobby. And I just got so irritable. I was flying off the handle at my kids way too often. And then I felt so guilty for always shrieking at them. And my poor husband is the one who bore the brunt of my Wicked Witch of the West impersonation. And I'm really fortunate that he's a patient guy, but I mean, it was really hard on our marriage. I was kind of hard to deal with. And it was really confusing because nothing in my medical training helped me understand what was happening to me. And what really started to change it for me is I read a book written by Suzanne Somers about women's hormones. And my husband is the one who actually found the book. It's called The Sexy Years. And I can assure you, it was nothing like that at my house at that time. But when he showed me this book, like he recognized me when he flipped through it, my symptoms. But I just saw Suzanne Somers' picture on the cover, and I just thought about Chrissy Snow from Three's Company, and then you remember the Thigh Master. And you know that medical doctors don't want to get our information from celebrities, but I knew that this was really a problem. I was not living the life that I wanted. I wasn't being the mom and the wife that I wanted to be, and so I read the book. And it really opened my mind. I read about all these women who felt just like me and how much better they felt when they got their hormones back in balance. And I found that there were places that I could go and get trained, just as you've been trained. And I changed everything about how I practice medicine. And I got my energy back. My kids got their mom back. My husband got his wife back. I got my life back. But I couldn't go back to what I was doing before, just writing prescriptions all day long, because that just didn't feel right anymore. And so now, just like you, I help people get to the root of why they're not feeling their best so that they can get well, get off a lot of those prescription medicines, and love the way they feel.
Right on. It's it's such a rich clinical journey getting to be part of that. And I find just the light in the eyes of the people that we get to work with it sort of says it all as they sort of come back to life.
Yeah.
Let's segue then next into, if you would talk with us a little bit about then, how do hormones affect our health and how we feel?
Yeah, they affect us a lot more than I think most people realize. Hormones are chemical messengers, right? So they're telling your cells what to do. And you need to get your cells to have the right message. So if you have too much of any hormone or not enough of any hormone, then your cells are getting the wrong instructions. Or if one hormone is kind of high normal and the other hormone is kind of low normal, they both might be technically in the normal range, but there's an imbalance there and we just don't feel our best. And our hormones affect how we feel on the inside, how we react to the world around us, how we relate to other people. They really play a big role in who we are. And so we know, what women come and tell me all the time is something is off. This doesn't feel normal. I don't feel like myself. Really, I just want to feel like myself again. I just want to feel normal. That's a really common thing. And that's something that's hard to put into words. It's hard to explain how you feel. And what I see happening is a lot of women go into the doctor and they complain. I don't feel good. I feel off. This isn't me. And they're looking for hope and answers when they walk in the door, but they usually walk out the door with another prescription for sleeping pills or antidepressants, when really the problem could be their hormones. So our hormones affect our energy. They affect whether we're able to bounce out of bed in the morning ready to go and whether we have that crash in the middle of the afternoon. They affect our sleep. So many women are waking up at 2 in the morning and at 4 in the morning. And then of course, when the alarm clock goes off at 6 in the morning, you're pressing snooze and crawling over to the coffee pot. So they affect our energy, our sleep. They have such a profound effect on our mood. So many women feel anxious or feel depressed. But what I find is even more common is that women just feel flat, like unmotivated. And a lot of times what we end up doing is we just put one foot in front of the other and make our way through our day the best that we can. And anything that really has to happen today, we'll look after it. But if it doesn't have to be today, we kind of leave it by the wayside because we're just not really feeling it. And a lot of women really relate to that. In fact, I was just talking to a lady today and she said, the way I describe it is left foot, right foot. Whenever anybody asks me, how am I just say left foot, right foot. So
just keep going, getting by, not thriving.
Not thriving. And that's not, we should expect more. And a lot of times women will say, well, maybe this is just what I should expect because of my age. And my recent comeback to that is, look at the 2 guys who are running for president. Doesn't matter what political background you have. There's 2 old guys running for president. They've got energy. You should have energy too. But so our hormones affect our immune system function, they affect our digestion, they affect our skin, our hair, they affect whether you pee when you jump and cough and sneeze. I mean, your hormones impact so many important parts of your body. And that's why when things go off, we just don't feel right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I often, when I'm chatting with folks about hormones, one thing that we'll talk about sometimes is that they're turning genes off and on. That's part of their, and often people then have this sort of lights coming on feeling of, oh my gosh, they get an intuitive sense that affecting genetic expression, turning hundreds of genes off and on, those are big plays. Yeah, and they have an impact. Well, as I reassured you before we segued into the recording portion, a number of the other functional medicine thought leaders we've had a chance and a privilege to talk to recently have focused on sleep and stress management and the relation to how the adrenals and the sex hormones are intertwined. And so I think today, so that again the folks that want to learn from you get a maximum opportunity, maybe we'll go next to how you flagged it already that a woman or a man for that matter can know there's potentially a hormone problem because they simply don't feel right. And so then let's focus on women because so many of them have that concern and so many of them report feeling unheard. So then how do they know? How do they take it to the next step to translate intuition into yes, I do?
Yeah. So when we're thinking about, like, could your symptoms be due to a hormone problem? One of the things that we look at is patterns. And so if you just have one symptom, you're not sleeping and otherwise everything else is fine, well, maybe that's not a hormone issue. But if you have a constellation of symptoms that go together, and sometimes the constellation of symptoms changes with where you are in your life, in your life's journey. So when you are, say, in your 20s and 30s, if you're having a lot of PMS, if you're having heavy periods or skipping periods or irregular cycles, those things really point to a hormone imbalance. But most of the time women would know that menstrual irregularities and those kinds of problems relate to hormones. So the problem is, if you go into your doctor to complain about it, we got one solution for that, and it's almost always birth control pills. And birth control pills sometimes can help with things, but they're not really fixing the root cause of the problem. They're kind of just band-aiding up over the symptom. And there are more things that we can do to measure hormones and evaluate in order to really understand why the periods are irregular, the PMS is bad, etc. And most of the time when women are younger, there's some underlying reason that's knocking their hormones out of whack. And then as we get over 35, and now we're in the late 30s and in the 40s, we kind of start to enter into that perimenopausal time in our lives. And so that's when things start to shift again. And so women can get, even if their periods were normal before, heavier periods, more PMS, and sometimes instead of just like a day or two, now it becomes like a week, sometimes even 2 weeks of PMS, where they're just tired and moody and they want to eat everything in the fridge and they don't feel like going to the gym and they're just not themselves. Sometimes the sleep gets worse, like before a period. Night sweats are actually really quite common. So if a woman is having night sweats, but not daytime hot flashes, usually that's not an estrogen deficiency, but it's a progesterone deficiency. So those are the two hormones that fluctuate with our cycle. And when you're in your 30s and 40s, it would be more common that your estrogen's okay, but your progesterone is starting to decline. And that's when we start to see the night sweats and the heavier periods and the more PMS. And other really common things that we see is anxiety. So that was one of my symptoms. I never used to be anxious, but once I was over 35, all of a sudden I was anxious and I'm worrying about the stupidest little things. And if you talked to me like the week before my period, I would be wigging out over crazy stuff. And then if you talk to me the week after my period, I'm calm, cool, and collected, and I seemed totally normal. And that's sort of a common pattern. Mm-hmm. So if things kind of go up and down over the month, that's a clue that it's a hormone issue. And then getting somewhere around about 50 is when we start to go through menopause. And then things change again. And that's when estrogen tends to go down. We tend to get dryness, dry eyes, dry hair, dry skin, vaginal dryness. We get more fatigue. The average woman gains 20 pounds when she goes through menopause, especially on her belly. And I hear women say all the time, like, I got all this stuff on my belly that didn't used to be there. And I haven't changed anything about my diet or my exercise. And it's so frustrating because a lot of times the things that used to work, if you needed to lose a few pounds, just don't work anymore. And then the other really big thing that we start to notice when women kind of are going through menopause is their brain is not reliable anymore. The brain fog, the memory, like can't find that word that you want to say, and you got to write everything down to try to keep track of things, and you need sticky notes for your sticky notes. And it's scary because you can't help but start to worry that this is like the first sign of early dementia. And I deal with this with ladies all the time, reassuring them, I don't think it's early dementia. I think it's your hormones.
Well, you've covered a lot of ground there that helps people, I think, get the outlines then of what to be thinking about. And so do women need to, these are sort of related questions, do women need to have testing done that illuminates the actual dimensions? Do they simply need to find a provider who's experienced with this and who can treat empirically and use testing only if it's needed? What are next steps for women who are resonating with what you're saying, but they're probably intimidated also by things they've heard about breast cancer risk or heart risk, or they sense a false dichotomy. It's either this or hormone drugs. So what are next steps for women who sense these outlines?
So yes, I do think that it is worth having hormone levels measured. And it's tricky because if you just go in to see your, regular gynecologist or your family doctor, so often I hear women told no, like the doctors won't agree to measure their hormones. Sometimes they're told you're too young to have a hormone issue. A lot of times they're told like, we just don't do that. Sometimes they're told your hormones change, so we can't measure them. And that's true. I mean, depending on where you are in your menstrual cycle, your hormones do change. So we just need to make sure we measure it in the right spot so we can interpret it properly. You know, your blood pressure changes and your blood sugar changes if you've eaten or not, but we still measure those things. So yes, we would want to get the hormones measured, but you probably will have to find a practitioner who is willing to work in a more holistic approach using a functional medicine approach. Otherwise, it can be very disappointing and frustrating. And then the other thing that I would say is, so let's say you do get your hormones measured and they can tell you that your estrogen or your progesterone or maybe your testosterone is off. We also want to make sure that we're not only focusing in on that one thing, because hormones are part of your whole body, and there are a lot of factors that cause your hormones to go out of whack. You know, not every woman that goes through menopause has a whole bunch of hot flashes. So why you? We want to look about what's going on with your stress levels, what's going on with cortisol, which is your stress hormone. If it's out of whack, it knocks all the other hormones out of whack. And we want to know what's going on with your gut health, because if you don't have a healthy gut, first of all, that's another stress on your body that can throw cortisol out of whack. But also, there's a lot of interplay between gut health and hormone health. So a lot of women who suffer with hormonal issues also have gut issues. They have IBS, or they just have chronic constipation, or they go back and forth between loose stools and hard stools, or they just feel bloated, and you know, there's some foods that they can't eat. So gut issues and hormone issues go hand in hand. And we want to address some of those underlying factors. And another underlying factor that's really important to address is toxins in our environment, because a lot of these chemicals that we get exposed to, these like pesticide residues in our food, and there's chemicals in our cosmetics and in their cleaning supplies and in all sorts of plastics and things. A lot of those chemicals are hormone disruptors. So they throw our hormones out of whack. And if you're toxic, the last thing we want to do is give you hormone replacement, put more hormones in your system. We want to get those toxins out of your system so the hormones can do their job properly. And if you do need hormone replacement, then we can get the benefits and have less to worry about in terms of the risks. Nutrition is really important for hormones. Sugar causes inflammation, and inflammation knocks your hormones out of whack. So we really want you to find somebody who's going to look at you as a whole person approach, and not just have a conversation about estrogen or progesterone or birth control pills versus hormone replacement therapy. So that's something that I feel really passionately about. So if we move on to the question of, if you do take a hormone replacement, are you going to get breast cancer? Are you going to have a heart attack? Part of it comes down to what body are we putting the hormones in? We want to put the hormones in a healthy body, not a body that's inflamed and full of toxins. But even if we just look at population studies, what the research has shown is that women who go on hormone replacement therapy with the natural version of the hormones, we call them bioidentical, meaning that the molecule of hormone we're giving you is an exact match to the molecule of hormone that your ovaries used to make. So at least in theory, your body can't tell the difference. Did it come from your ovaries, or did it come from, you know, Walmart pharmacy? And when we use these natural hormones, the studies do not show that there is an increase in your risk for getting breast cancer. So what I usually tell people is, I can't promise you're not going to get breast cancer. It's caused by all these environmental toxins in our environment. But the studies do not show that using the natural hormones will increase your chances of getting breast cancer. And that's really important, because an entire generation of women got scared off hormone replacement therapy because their doctors told them it was dangerous, it was bad, they were going to get breast cancer. Somebody back in 2013, so the big news about hormones cause breast cancer, that came out in 2001. I was in medical school in the early 90s. We were trained that we should put everybody on hormone replacement therapy for their own good, because it was going to prevent heart disease and dementia and osteoporosis. Then 2001, this study came out and said, breast cancer. And all of a sudden, hormones went from greatest thing since sliced bread to bad, dangerous, and scary. But in 2013, somebody did a study when they looked at women, and they estimated that 90,000 women were going to die because they went off their hormone replacement therapy. So the benefits of being on the hormones, even those synthetic, the non-bioidentical hormones that we used to use all the time, you were still better off statistically to be on the hormones than off the hormones, because they were reducing colon cancer and osteoporosis. And so we know so much more now 20 years later than we did when that study first came out. And what we know is that for most women, the benefits of hormone replacement therapy outweigh the risks. In fact, far outweigh the risks in most cases, especially if you start it when you're relatively younger. So if you're 75 and you've never been on hormone replacement and now you decide you want to start, well, we can't really go back and change what's happened over the previous 25 years and erase things. But if you're, in your 50s, if you're, within 10 years of menopause and we use the hormones going forward, then we see lots of positive benefits. So even not even just functional medicine doctors who like this holistic approach, but even the regular gynecologists have really changed their tunes. And so not all doctors have gotten the memo, but as a general statement, our attitude about hormones has really changed. And so now we want to give a personalized approach. We don't just want to blanket give everybody the same thing, which is kind of how I was taught to do it in medical school. We want to evaluate your personal symptoms, your personal health history, your risk factors, your family history, so that we can take into account what would be the best thing for you. And even for those few small number of people where maybe hormone replacement isn't going to turn out to be the best thing, we still want to make sure that your gut is healthy and we get the toxins out of your system and you're nutritionally sound and the inflammation is down. We want you to have the healthiest body, and we can do a lot to reduce hormone symptoms just by all the other things that we do, even if we don't use hormone replacement therapy.
Wonderful. So much good content there. It's going to be great for our listeners. I've flashed on a lot of things while you were talking, and I've run into the dilemma I always do with these podcasts, where I get to meet my tribe around the country, and then I think, oh, if I had 3 days, then we could really riff this to its proper extent. One of the things I'd like to flag and have you comment a little on, just because I think it's so important, is when I was certifying in functional medicine, the kind of lay term for this was cortisol steal, meaning that the adrenals were stealing the parent hormone, pregnenolone, and if it cascades downstream for the overproduction of cortisol due to these kind of stress-to-stress responses that we will let hijack our day-to-day executive management of non-threat situations, and there's not enough parent hormone left to go over and make DHEA and estrogen and testosterone. And so I find when I talk with women about that mindfulness or yoga or heart rate variability, heart math, Oura ring, even just an attitude shift as kind of the lights are coming on, as they know that by protecting that pathway against cortisol overproduction, they are rebooting their native pathway. And then they can kind of segue that into like, oh, now I've got skin in the game. I find they have a fresher, quicker response. Some of them don't necessarily need the bioidenticals, and if they do, they pack more punch. Some of them then are candidates for a little DHEA kind of halfway through the process. And so I find the skin in the game component to be really, really important. Like you say, whether or not they proceed on to other steps or not, they just have a much, they're more at ease in their own skin, their eyes are brighter, they're happier, they're more at peace.
Yeah. Did you know that there is a study where they took a group of women and they measured their cortisol level, and then they took them to the spa for the week, and then they measured their cortisol after the spa, and their cortisol levels were better, their hot flashes were less. So what we need to do is we need to petition Blue Cross Blue Shield to send these women to the spa.
Well, I know that there are certainly going to be some people who hear that and endorse that idea. One of my favorite thought experiments is, how would this all look if it were all driven by best principles of what serves people's needs best, with no obstructions or no distorting factors, and how the ideas translate to what patients need. And I think that's one of the things that's made me really happy to be doing functional medicine. No approach is perfect, but I really like it that the people who, I often reflect that when I'm using functional medicine, I'm the beneficiary of this tool. So I'm wielding this tool for people's benefit. I've never felt like I could come up with it on my own due to its complexity and depth and all of that sort of thing. But it seems to me that it's got this incredibly integrity-driven focus on people's well-being, and that some of these distortions that can create a disconnect between ideas and outcome, you know, functional medicine's got some internal firewalls against that. I think that's a lot of why women and patients in general have such good outcomes.
Yeah, one of the things, if I could just interject, when I'm first starting to work with somebody and I'm sort of describing how this works and what we're trying to achieve, one of the things that I say is, you know, we're going to evaluate what's going on in your body. You know, we do testing to find out what's happening, and then we're going to give you a plan for what we can do to fix it. But really what we're trying to do is help you understand what's going on in your body, why is it happening, what can you do about it, so that we are putting you in control of your own wellness, so that you can keep yourself out of the doctor's office, not be dependent on their prescription pads, and you know, be in charge of your own health. And that's very empowering. And I think that a big chunk of getting people moving in the right direction is just understanding what's going on and why. Because if you understand, then, you know, it's easier to do the things that you need to do, as opposed to if somebody just tells you, you know, here's a few vitamins to take, or, you know, here's some cream to rub on, and you don't understand why, it's harder to stick with it. So I like that functional medicine it's a lot of it is educating. It's empowering.
Right on. Let's definitely talk about that a little bit, because again, I think it's so important. I always think of the word agency when I hear what you're describing. And I think that people are thirsty for it. I think people are thirsty for a sense of agency. I've found now that a degree of agency is so critical to a successful outcome that I just have a conversation visit one and try to say in a very inviting way, not only do you, the patient, have agency, but you're going to do the work, you're going to do the heavy lifting, we're going to be co-navigating together, but I'll be sort of mapping and coaching, and you're going to be, you know, you get the credit because you're going to do the work. And I find there are a few people at the first visit now that hear that. It's poignant for me, but I think they can hear the respect, and they're kind of not in that place yet, maybe. And sometimes it's better that they reflect and come back when they have that.
When they're ready.
Yeah, but I find that well over 90% of the people first visit, it seems to me the response is like, yes, of course I have agency. Like, let me at it. I often have to say, let's not do all 5 tests at once, because when we restore your gut barrier integrity, the downstream manifestations are going to change whatever we would.
Yeah, you don't need the other
check
things,
it.
perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah, I just find that skin in the game component, it's such good news that people are craving it. And I think it's very, I guess to me, the related issue is that this is worth exploring a little more. Functional medicine is so different than in that restoration of native vitality is the clinical tool. And that looks at something you brought up at the beginning of the visit. When we're talking about a non-drug approach, the obvious question is, well, what if we're not going to use medications per se as the primary tool? To me, restoration of native vitality is what's happening. We're helping people kind of hit the reset.
Yeah, I agree. And we're restoring wellness. Whereas when we use prescription medicines, a lot of the times what we're doing is we're putting a Band-Aid over their symptom. And so, but we're not really addressing the underlying cause. And then a lot of the times you have to stay on the drug, right? I mean, if you're on a blood pressure drug, it pushes your blood pressure down, but as soon as you stop taking the pill, your blood pressure just goes right back up again. So it hasn't really fixed the problem. You know, we need to be looking for what are the factors that have caused your blood pressure to go up in the first place. And people, it's common sense, right? Like they think that's what they were supposed to be getting when they went to their doctor in the first place. I think that's what I was supposed to have been learning at medical school in the first place. I didn't know that I was going to medical school to learn how to prescribe pills. I mean, you know, but that's sort of what it turned out to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought when I got certified in functional medicine, a lot of my time would be spent sort of trying to set the stage for patients to have aha moments, but I have found that it feels very commonsensical to the majority of them. So not much of the time and energy goes there. A lot of it's creating the map. Is there anything more that we should add about how people need to take charge? Because in preparing for today's talk, you said if there was one thing that you would identify as mission critical, it's that sense of people being in charge. So any other ways we need to elaborate on that today?
Well, if you're not feeling good, you should not accept that. Like if you do not feel normal, if you feel off, if you know that something is wrong, then something is wrong. And um, it might not be a serious disease. I hope it's not a serious disease. I mean, so many people, they just don't feel good because of all sorts of little factors that are just all adding up to zap your energy and give you a foggy brain and, achy joints and, your hair is dry and lifeless, etc. And if your doctor doesn't have the answer or they just want to give you another prescription, look for somebody who can help. I mean, don't settle. You only have one life to live. You deserve to love the way you feel. Find somebody who can help you. So look for a functional medicine practitioner who can evaluate your hormones, your gut health, whatever seems like it's the most important factor for you. And in order to help women know whether hormones could be a problem, I wrote a book called This Is Not Normal, A Busy Woman's Guide to Symptoms of Hormone Imbalance. And that's something that is full of like checklists. So you can read and, check to see if you fit with this hormone issue or this hormone issue. And then it's got tips to help you start to get your hormones back in balance, and also tips on, how you can find somebody to help you with this. And that's something that is available. I give you the link for that, isityourhormones.com. You can download a free ebook. So
Right.
that's something that can help people.
Nice, nice. I was checking that out where the ebook is easy to find based on those directions you gave us. And so then people have that quick next step that they can take to learn more. And you'll probably also be happy to know that in the show notes and the blog transcription of what we did today, not only will some of the predictable things be there in terms of how people can find you, your website, your ebook, your regular book, but also some of those folks that you invoked as thought leaders, then those will be hot links in the blog. And so people can drill down in the blog
Oh, good.
and learn more. And I think that's an added dimension when thought leaders take the time to do this. It can be nice to know then that we're trying on our end to really make sure people can explore or learn different ways and drill down in different ways. I thought I should also just briefly editorialize that you and I are examples of if someone comes to see us as functional medicine MDs and they say, I'm tired, I'm suspicious, I have a hormonal imbalance, you and I and many functional medicine medical providers are trained to always be vigilant that something else might be happening. So we have training in that person looking ashen and the way they ache and something about their complete blood cell count being really concerning for something dangerous, something different.
Right.
And so there isn't, again, there's no, I would describe it again as a false dichotomy, this old sort of natural medicine versus conventional. When functional medicine medical providers are seen, there is the standard of care vigilance for what's called the differential diagnosis. What could this be? How do I figure it out? How much of a threat is it to my patient? I have found another thing about functional medicine that sometimes is very powerful is people trust me because they want to be natural, and then it'll turn out we find something that needs a different avenue. They need to see their surgeon, they need to see their specialist, but they trust me to do that because they feel like I see through two lenses at once. And
Right. And
so,
we can also be an advocate, like if they go to, let's just say they need to see a surgeon, and they get told something that sounds real scary, sometimes we have more time. We can explain it in a way that makes sense, and we can help them with decisions, even in their regular conventional medical world, I have a lot of patients that, come to me just to sort of talk things through.
Absolutely, absolutely. I didn't know back in, 14 years ago or so, switching into adding functional medicine and then getting certified a number of years ago, how much value that would have to be a bridge for people, and again, a chance for, and I find also that the second opinion seems to really clip in a very sort of dovetail or modular fashion with the patient's concerns, the other provider. There don't, it's exceedingly rare in my experience for there to be conflicts.
Right.
So I think
Yeah.
that's very,
I think functional medicine doctors are really nice people. We don't have egos. It's not the arrogant doctors that go into this. We're the nice guys, the ones that are easy to talk to. We spend time with our patients. We really like our patients. Like, our whole goal is to help our patients. And so,
well, your time today has just felt radiant and inspiring. I can't thank you enough.